and that has some more of my food storage items. And I'm going to go over that with you. It also has other items on it, so we're going to do
Good afternoon, diners, and welcome to the special Thanksgiving edition of the Coro News Report here on the Klops Cafe of the Doomstead Diner. And yeah, I know, it's not November. We're not anywhere close to Thanksgiving or the election either, which also falls in November for POTUS. However, this is not the traditional Thanksgiving. This is a Thanksgiving for some things that I am thankful for in the coronavirus pandemic. The first one is I don't have coronavirus yet. That's important. Okay. And then the second one is that I have food. Lots of it. Okay. And I'm going to go over today as our topic food security and food preservation, and what's important in saving for yourself so that you're prepared for situations like this. You know, I wasn't really sure that this business would actually occur before I was pushing up daisies. But, you know, it did. And now it's all paying off for me. Okay? So we're going to look at that. And I'm grateful also for the fact that I live on the last great frontier of Alaska. And I'm not wearing my Alaska hat today, okay? Because I figure I got enough fucking Alaska props up at the front of the table so you know where this is coming from. I'm wearing my chef's beret, okay? And I actually have a chef's hat too, all right? But it's white and it doesn't go with my outfit. And, you know, chefs wear hats basically to keep your hair from getting in food, which people don't like. You know, I don't know why. You know, Alaska is one of the lowest population zones on the face of the earth, with the possible exception of Siberia and Nunavut and a few other far north places. Antarctica, of course, has like nobody, but Antarctica is not a habitable place. I mean, there's some science research stations, but you know, they have to be supplied, and all this stuff has to be flown in to keep those stations running. You know, if BAU breaks down, the people there are ice cubes. Okay, you know. So at this stage of the game, Antarctica is not a place you want to move to, despite the fact that there aren't any people probably with coronavirus. They have showed up on an aircraft carrier though, and that's quite an interesting piece of news, which maybe I'll get into, but I want to get to the food. So, you know, Alaska is great, and I love it, and I wouldn't live anywhere else. And I may never leave the place again, the way things are going. My last flight was first class down to Seattle, so I have that treasured memory. But we'll see what happens with all that in the fullness of time. And you see behind me on the video today a prepper showing her storage of stuff, and sometime I'm going to do a tour of my storage of stuff and what I do with it and so forth. But before we go into all that, what are we having for Thanksgiving dinner today? Well, we're having a Sino-Nipponese, aka Asian, meal. And I pulled out all stops on this one, folks. Okay? And you saw a picture of it at the front of the video. And let me go over what we're having. Okay? So we've got our necessary Corona News prop of Corona beer. But I'm probably not going to have it with this meal. Okay? It's just a prop today. But I am on my third case now. And to wash down, Alaska glacial spring water, the greatest water in the world. All right? As well as hot sake. Okay? Being heated on my toothbrush holder stand with a tea candle, a tea light. All right? And these things are great little heat devices. When I did a piece on that a while back, I'm not sure if I did a video, but I know I wrote an article about it. And it's a great way of heating up your sake, and you can also use it for making more candles. Very good. All right, so that's the beverages for the day. And then what are we having to eat? All right, well, over here we have miso soup, my favorite Japanese soup. And they have egg flour soup and a few other ones that are, okay. But miso is the best. And for you vegans out there, it's vegan friendly today. All right. I didn't even use fish broth today, which I usually use fish broth or powdered fish broth actually. I don't save bones for fish and whatnot anymore, so I have to buy the powder if I'm going to have fish broth. No, I used the vegetable broth. Okay, and the tofu, of course, that's in it is vegan friendly, and seaweed, and mushrooms, and scallions and chives are in there too. And then miso is fermented bean paste, and that also is vegan friendly. So that's 100% vegan friendly. And miso, by the way, fermented bean paste, that is a food preservation technique that's very important. All right, fermentation was one of the methods that was used pre-refrigeration to preserve foods. And cheese is a fermented product, and things like sour cream, fermented products, beer is a fermented product, etc. There's many of them. Kimchi is fermented, and whatever. There are all sorts of ones. And learning for the fermentation process is an important step that you can take in terms of preparing yourself for the post-coronavirus pandemic and post-collapse world, because it's looking more and more like the two are going hand in hand. All right? It's unclear as of yet how far down the ladder coronavirus will take us, but at 1 million global infections already and doubling rapidly, it's really, if it continues at this pace, only a matter of a couple of months maybe for it to reach 1 billion. All right, because you go 1 million, 2 million, 4 million, 8 million, 16 million, 32 million, 64 million, 256 million, 512 million, and then poof, you're at 1 billion. All right, so that's 6 doublings maybe. 2 weeks, say 2 weeks each. That's 12 weeks, 3 months. And it seems to be doubling actually faster than that. So it could be very big. Maybe it'll slow down or whatever. Maybe there will be herd immunity. There are all sorts of maybes. But right now, it's moving like a wildfire. Like the wildfires in California or Oz this year, they just grow exponentially. Okay? They get bigger and bigger, faster and faster. It's a square law over there. Okay? Anyway, So let's go on. So that's the miso soup. Also vegan friendly. Over here, we have sticky white rice. Okay? And I actually did use sticky rice this time. Because you can eat sticky rice better with chopsticks. Alright? But I'm not going to. Not on camera anyway. You know, and you kind with rice, whatever kind, you kind of scoop it into your mouth. You know, you don't really pick it up with the chopstick. That just doesn't work. You know, you can do it sort of with a sticky rice, but you know, no. And you know, etiquette-wise, for the Japanese, that's cool. All right. Here, and same with soup. You know, they kind of slurp it out of the bowl rather than dipping in a spoon. Although sometimes they do. Doing that is also okay in Japan. Here, you know, if you slurp out of your soup bowl, you know, they think you're a dog or something. It's not generally acceptable. All right, so that's those two. And then for an appetizer today, let me put down the chopstick because I'm not going to try to pick them up right now with the chopstick. I might later, okay? Because I think I can do these still. I have pot stickers, and that's the Chinese contribution to this meal. All right, everything else is basically Japanese, these guys are not vegan friendly. All right, they're filled with pork, and I didn't make them. They are frozen. Okay, I can make them, you know, but I don't. You know, the frozen ones are fine. And if you go to a restaurant, by the way, that's usually what you're getting, is commercially made frozen ones. They don't make their pot stickers usually, except in really, really high-end Japanese restaurants or Chinese restaurants. They don't make their own pot stickers, okay? You know, and so they're quite good. And then with that, then there's our two main courses, okay? And this is a Japanese surf and turf. All right. Oh, and by the way, with the pot stickers, you can get them filled with all veggie. So they would be vegan friendly, but I don't have that kind on the plate now. But if you were at the diner restaurant, for real, if we had a in real life one, then I would have available vegan friendly pot stickers for you. Okay? So that would be 1, 2, 3 vegan friendly items. But right now they got pork in them, so they're not vegan friendly. All right. And then our main dishes, okay, are a salmon and steak teriyaki. All right. And this is Alaska salmon from my freezer, freshly caught last summer. Well, it was actually almost the fall. By friends of mine, dip netting, who gave me a couple of big fillets, and they've been sitting in my freezer ever since. And so for this Thanksgiving meal, I took it out and I'm celebrating. And freezing is also a very important food preservation method, especially as long as you have electricity. And here in Alaska, we have the Great Outdoor Freezer, which I have been using quite a bit. And I'm going to do a video on how to use the Great Outdoor Freezer, which you can even in less, cold climates. Frigid, freezing, sub-zero. But Alaska, it works good really half the year, okay? Most places, 3 months you can use the outdoor freezer. But here, you can get 6 months out of it. If you build an ice house, if I built an ice house outside, if I had my own property and everything, man, it would go year round, all right? There'd be ice in there year round, as long as I collected it during the winter and whatnot and put the blocks in and so forth. So, refrigeration up here is really not essential to keeping food cold and good. It's probably, the best method of doing it. You can't beat it. Salting, fermenting, canning, nothing beats the freezer, all right, for storing food in terms of its flavor, its texture, and all the rest. So I have a big chest freezer, and then I have a stand-up tall freezer with my refrigerator, and together that has enough volume for a lot of meat for one person. I don't know how long it would take me to work through it, but it would be a while. Okay, so we got salmon teriyaki, and then we also have the steak teriyaki. Is that perfectly done or what? Okay, that's just how I like it. And this particular piece of beef, great marbling, and it's a cut that you won't usually get if you go to a restaurant and have steak teriyaki. Usually they use sirloin in most places. If you go to Benihana or something like that, typical Japanese restaurant. If you want really good cut of beef, you're going to have to go to a high-end Jap restaurant, and really probably over to Japan. In New York City, you can probably find one, and in some of the bigger cities, but you're not going to find one in, Peoria, and probably not one in, even a town like, say, Austin. I would be surprised if Austin had a Jap restaurant that served, Wagyu beef or whatnot, with their teriyaki. Maybe our resident of Austin, who is a restaurant aficionado like myself, he might fill me in on a really good Jap restaurant that's there. So that is the meat portion, and again, getting back to the meat, I went over that in a prior broadcast about how it's one of the chief deals that pegs you as a hypocrite, because you're eating beef, and the ranching of beef is so resource intensive, water intensive, and so forth, and they produce methane, and they are not well cared for. It's they're injected with hormones, and on and on for reasons for why you should be eating beef. Okay, I've been eating beef my whole life, so this is not the time I'm going to stop. And as it goes, this is not a lot of beef. It's less than a double cheeseburger at McDonald's. I think I got maybe a third of a pound there. I don't know. It's not too much, and I'm not going to eat it all at this sitting. Again, these plates and these tables that I put out of food, I don't eat them all at this sitting, even after the filming is over. I take it all, it goes back in the fridge in one way or another, and then I eat it over the course of a couple of days as leftovers. All right? And that's, why it also doesn't really cost me that much, believe it or not. I stay inside the Snapcard budget, even with all this quality stuff, high quality foods. And I will explain in a future episode how to do that. But not today. And finally, last but not least, and really my favorite, and it is vegan friendly, okay, because it's a tempura, and it's a vegetarian, vegan tempura, vegetable tempura, okay, which I've got onions and Italian squash and carrots and yellow squash, and I'm sorry, it was Italian eggplant, and mushrooms, broccoli, really the gamut of stuff that you could grow in your victory garden, and tons of great vitamins, and super healthy. Okay, all right. Deep frying stuff. There's oil in there, but as batters go, tempura batter is very light and it doesn't hold a lot of oil. And if you drain it well after you take it out of the oil, then there's not all that much oil in it. And a little oil, that's energy. Okay, it's good for you, in my opinion. It hasn't hurt me. And my heart is still good. Everything else is a mess, but my heart's okay. My lungs are still good too, despite the smoking. Okay, and there's asparagus in there too. But it's not entirely vegan. Okay, this is a surf and turf, which you already had the salmon and the steak, but in this I added, scallops. Okay, so we have scallops in there, which I love. All right, not shrimp. Okay, usually tempuras have shrimp, and if you go to a restaurant, you're not going to get a tempura usually that has scallops in it instead of the shrimp, and I prefer them. Okay, and then the real premium stuff, lobster tempura. Okay, and it's not Maine's lobster, unfortunately. Maine is on the other coast. It's way over on the other side of the country, and we don't really see Maine lobsters up here to speak of. So this is a spiny lobster tail, and it's okay. But I like those nice big ass claws that you get on a Maine lobster. Oh, can't beat it. But I'm probably not going to see one of those again too soon. I hope I do, though. I hope I do. I'd like to have one more Maine lobster before I buy my ticket to the Great Beyond. All right, so that's the meal. And now let's get into food preservation. Now, there's a lot of techniques for it. I mentioned fermentation. I mentioned freezing. Okay. But a more common one that is used by preppers is canning. And I had a large dispute with one of the diners regarding canning and my knowledge of it, my ability to can safely, not die from botulism. if I attempted to can liver pate that I made up some time back, over a year ago, in fact. I'm a trained biochemist, and if there's one thing I know how to do, it's sterilize dishware and prepare stuff for not growing evil bacterias and stuff in your petri dish, essentially. A canning jar is just petri dish that's really tall and has a top. Okay. So what I did was I canned the stuff, I put it on the shelf, and then in a fairly recent video, I ate the liver pate. And my friend was wrong again. Okay? I didn't die of botulism, and it was good. I had it on a bagel I also had the other half of the bagel, I had a New York style bagel with Nova Scotia salmon and chive cream cheese and red onion and tomato, and it was a delicious brunch for that one. So, some people are often wrong, but never in doubt. That's Surly's line. I glommed it for this. Canning is important, all right, to know how to do, and to have the canning jars and have the pressure cooker and so forth and so on to do it with. So those are prep items that you should have on your shelf somewhere. And there are now electric pressure cookers, the Instapots, and then the traditional style that you put on your stove or over an open flame outside and so forth. And there's a certain amount of care you got to take with them. The Instapots are fairly idiot-proof. Okay, they've got locking mechanisms and safety devices that the standard ones don't have, because it is possible to explode your pressure cooker. Blow the lid off when you open it. You don't let it release fast enough. All sorts of stuff that you can do and hurt yourself. All right. So if you are going to use them, read up on it and be careful. Okay. If coronavirus doesn't kill you, you don't want to die in a pressure cooker accident. Instead, that would be bad. So that's important. And then drying and salting food, especially meats, very important. When I lived down in Brazil, at the open air markets, they did not have refrigeration in those years. That was in the 1960s. And if you wanted fresh meat that wasn't salted, they would butcher the pig or the chicken, or they didn't usually have cows and steaks there. You couldn't get beef butchered right there and then. The chickens and pig were butchered basically on the spot. And what else? And the fish was all, freshly brought in. It was on ice, okay? They didn't have ice and ice machines in those years. But insofar as buying the fresh stuff, basically only rich Americans and the Brasileiro elite could afford it. The hoi polloi, the people from the favelas and so forth, they all ate dried meats and various kinds of sausage and stuff like that. That was heavy in the salt and so forth. And the national dish of Brazil is feijoada. It's a meal, a stew with black beans, and then the meats that are in it is dried and salted beef and sausage of various types in there for your animal protein, and it's delicious. And then you have farofa, which is a ground manioc root, and rice, and pimento, which is like a kind of a hot sauce. Just still a favorite of mine. I haven't done a feijoada here at home. I don't think I've done one yet for the video. I'll have to do one. So great food, and again, the preservation technique for that is drying and salting. And those aren't hard things to do either. But you have to have the salt, and you have to have a drying rack, and then there are electric ones now as well that you can use and expedite the process. So you can look into putting one of those in your preps. And that I think is most of the major techniques that you can use. But for salting, of course, you got to have a supply of salt. All right, which everybody takes for granted nowadays. But you go back a while in history, and not that long ago, 1700s, even early 1800s here in the FS of A, if you were anywhere but the coast, you could hardly get salt. And so other stuff had to be used. And there are other stuff that you can use in its place, but nothing works quite as well as salt. So lay in a supply of salt. I have a 50-pound bag, and I think that's going to be enough because I don't expect my freezers to give out anytime too soon. I have backup electric power, so I haven't done the salting thing yet. And as far as drying goes, it's also good for fruit. Okay, raisins, dried apricots, dried apples, prunes, etc. Those are all dry fruits, okay? And you can buy them already made. That's also a good prep, all right? And they're all sealed nicely in their own little vacuum sealed bags, so you don't have to do that. So if you're going to lay in preps, that's easier to do than doing all the drying and vacuum sealing and so forth yourself. Although it comes in cheaper if you do it yourself, DIY, as most things do. But with my preps, I built them up over years, over a decade, that I have been storing a lot of this stuff. And in fact, this steak here, it's at least 8 years old, because it was in a vacuum sealed bag that was not dated. And after 2010, anytime I did a vacuum sealing session, I would date the bag, okay? So it had to be done before 2010, which means, it's over a decade old. But it's still great, okay? I'll eat some, just to prove it. Good. And this piece of meat is tender enough that even with only 3 teeth on the top, I can chew it and gum it enough to get it down and enjoy the flavor and the texture too. But it takes me a while to chew through it, which is why I generally don't eat on camera. It's not something you really want to sit through and watch. Okay. So, this is my form of savings. A lot of people, save their money, cash. Other people put gold in, the basement safe, and or they dig a hole in the backyard and bury treasure. But with gold, you've got to be able to trade it for food. So why go through the step? I just save the food instead. See? And so, because I have so much, one of the reasons it doesn't cost me very much is because right now I'm basically going through stuff that I already had. The fish was given to me. The steak, 10 years old. Okay, rice costs like nothing. So it's the most expensive thing in this meal was the veggies, because I don't grow my own. But if you have your own property and you have a green thumb, unlike me, then you could have great fresh veggies, even if they become unavailable in your local food superstore, which hasn't happened yet here, but you can kind of see the writing on the wall now, with failure of just-in-time delivery over a period. I don't know how long any of that's going to take. I'm glad everything is still available, but it is somewhat risky to go out to this food superstore to do your shopping. All right? So if you watch my previous video on gloving up and masking up, when you do go out shopping, try to do it as infrequently as possible. Try to do it at parts of the day when the stores aren't crowded. And glove up, mask up, and hopefully you stay safe, right? Until this wave makes its trip around the globe and takes with it however many it's going to take. And then hopefully there will be therapies, hopefully there will be a vaccine, and we'll be able to put this one sort of behind us. Although it's hard to imagine that that's going to happen in our lifetimes. So devastating already. And then what will follow? The rats are starving in New Orleans and they're running around the streets. Rats are what carried bubonic plague to Europe in the Middle Ages. So, coronavirus is not the end-all and be-all of the pestilence problem. And that's one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. War, pestilence, famine, and death. And we're experiencing just about all of them right now. And that's all to do. For this time, until next time. Here, on the Caro News Report of the Collapsed Cafe of the Doomstead Diner. Hasta la premium meal. Lobster, steak, yum.